Episode 12. We've made it. I told you whenever I started this, I had 12 episodes lined out. And after that, I had no real plans. Do I continue this, or is this the last episode? Well, stay tuned to the end of this podcast and find out. Today we're going to be talking about best practices you should be doing as a professional woodworker. Well, okay, only 3 of really important best practices you should be doing. We could do an entire podcast called Best Practices of a Woodworker. That's not a bad idea. Anyway, okay, so top 3 things you should be doing as a professional woodworker. My name's Roger Kugler. This is Working at Woodworking Podcast, episode number 12. So number 1, sourcing materials and supplies. You can't buy things the way you used to when you were doing this for a hobby. You were just learning things. Now that you're a professional, you've got to start buying like a professional. I had a very beneficial awakening probably maybe 2 years into my professional career as a woodworker. I was fortunate enough to take a Saturday class at the Mark Adams School of Woodworking in Franklin, Indiana. And I had signed up for a class called Being a Professional Woodworker from Lon Schleining. He's a gentleman in Southern California, fantastic woodworker, very good business person. And he started off the class, there were probably, 12, 15 of us in there. And he said, how many of you are buying rough lumber? And I'm pretty sure every hand went up. He got very animated and he almost screamed at us. Why? Well, I thought that's what a professional woodworker did. He bought rough lumber. And he went on and explained that you're buying more work for yourself. That the lumber supplier that you have has huge planers and milling machines that they can process lumber 10 times faster than you can. So if you're using standard 3/4 inch stock and you're buying 4/4 rough sawn lumber, you're spending a considerable amount of time surfacing that lumber down to 3/4. Light bulb went off. Oh my gosh. He also explained that lumber suppliers are there to supply you good quality lumber. Now he was in Southern California, and I don't know the market there, and I guess it's a little different than we in the Midwest, who are, literally surrounded by forest. But he explained that whenever you order a stack of lumber and you specified exactly what you want and the stuff shows up and it looks like crap, just explain to the driver, I'm sorry, this must be someone else's lumber because I didn't order this, and send it back. And the lumber supplier will figure out that you're not going to accept their crap. Where maybe a hobbyist woodworker wouldn't want to, rock the boat or look amateurish. But you as a professional, you demand a certain level of quality of the products that you get in. I've had some walnut that I was rather disappointed in, but I know that the walnut market around here is a little squirrely, even before everything happened the last couple of years. So I made that work. Hint, Van Dyke crystals is probably the very best stain to use on walnut. So that will give us point number 1. Don't buy retail. I'll embarrassingly admit I screwed this up so badly when I started woodworking. I was buying hardwood from, local hardwood dealers. But guess what? they were selling me lumber at retail prices. And it wasn't until, probably a year, maybe 2 years, right before I took the Mark Adams class, that I was at a Woodworking in America show up in Indianapolis, and there was this very nice young lady standing behind a booth at Frank Miller Lumber, and they had a stack of lumber that they were selling, and we got talking, and she learned that I was a struggling new business owner, and I had a business card, and she suggested that I sign up as a professional account, and then I would get the business price for lumber. You mean there's a choice? This is how naive I was. I mean, I'm used to going to the big box store or the lumber yard and buying 2x4s, 2x6s, 1x12, number 2 pine, maybe some number 1 pine. And I just didn't know. And I'm kind of betting that there's a few of you that have light bulbs, LED light bulbs, over your head right now. Yes, there is a different pay structure between retail prices and business prices. And you don't need to be ordering in 1,000 board foot lots. In fact, Frank Miller doesn't have a specific board foot count. They will deliver whatever you order for $50. They're in my town every Thursday. If the order is less than $750 at the business price, they'll charge me $50 for delivery. And you know what? $50 is nothing whenever you add in your gas prices and your time to go and pick something up. It is a huge convenience to have that lumber dropped off in your driveway, as opposed to you driving someplace, picking it out, loading it, driving back, unloading it, etc. So it's a huge convenience, and I just absolutely love that. Check around in your area. They may be few and far between where you live. In the East, we're blessed with having probably 3 or 4 suppliers within a 2 to 3 hour drive from here, most of them offering delivery. So that's going to be the first thing to do. Set up a business account with your wood supplier. Where else can you get wood? Auctions. I will see with some frequency particularly a farm or a homestead out in the country that is selling off a tractor and riding mowers and 3-bottom plow and a stack of miscellaneous lumber. That could mean an accumulation of scrap 2x4s from the last 20 years, or that could be a stack of quarter sawn white oak that's been air drying in an old dairy barn for the last 30 years. If it is, the auctioneer will highlight that because they know the value of good lumber. The one big caveat with buying lumber at an auction is, number one, you need to transport it. So if you have a pickup truck or maybe a vehicle in a trailer, that is fantastic. You can only get so much lumber on a set of racks on your vehicle. I usually top out around 100, 150 pounds. Anything over that, I don't feel real comfortable, or you could make 27 trips back and forth. Factor in your transportation costs to any auction buy that you make. The other thing that you have to be very careful of when buying lumber at auction is, bugs. I was at one auction that guy had a lot of wood, and every single stick was infested with powder post beetle. And these are a little tiny beetle that get into the wood, and the only way to really tell that they're there is you'll see this real fine sawdust on the wood. And if you look closely enough, you'll see this little tiny hole. It's about, I don't know, 3/32, maybe a 16th of an inch. That would be about 0.8 millimeters for our Australian and European listeners. Thank you, by the way. And it can just take over an entire load of lumber. Can you use it? Yes. You wouldn't want to make a credenza out of that wood and sell it to a customer and introduce powder post beetles into their home. That's not good. So you're going to have to kill the buggers somehow. And not an expert at this, but from what I understand, you can either do that by heat, that would be kiln dried wood, or you can do that with chemical exhaust. Some people will wrap a load of lumber up in plastic and back their truck up to it and use a pipe to go from the exhaust pipe into the big plastic bag and just smoke the little buggers out. Other people have called exterminators and have found very economical, very good solutions to treating a stack of lumber using an exterminator. After all, they're kind of the bug experts. Myself, I avoid it. I just don't buy buggy lumber. Not worth my time or effort. What about urban forestry? This is something, especially if you are in a very urban, highly dense population, could be really, really good for you. We have a tree company that's relatively new in our community that is starting to harvest urban trees for their lumber. Whenever somebody calls out there's a tree that needs to be taken down, and instead of just running that through a giant wood chipper and making a whole bunch of mulch that gets dumped someplace out in the country, they are taking out the bole of the tree and sawing that up, and they've invested in a vacuum kiln and they're drying that for sale. They haven't got everything quite set up yet, but I'm very excited about that because you can get some good quality lumber and you can get some very unique lumber that's not harvested on a commercial basis. You're not going to be able to get that from your big lumber supplier. So what else should you not pay retail for? Sandpaper. I was buying sandpaper at either the lumber yard or online, and I finally found that, well, actually I didn't find, I had a phone call from a young lady down in North Carolina who introduced herself as the business arm of Klingspor, and you may have one of their catalogs. And she said that we sell all of our products at a wholesale side to businesses. And so I set up the account, and I've been buying my sandpaper from them at about half the cost that I've been paying, like online. Here's another way of not paying retail. Are you a veteran? If you are, and you haven't yet, you need to go to Lowe's and sign up as a veteran and get your 10% discount. Yes, I said that. 10% discount for veterans at Lowe's, the big blue box. Go online and sign up through that way. They will verify your service records and you get your 10%. You just need to tell them, ask them for the military discount and give them your phone number, and your account pulls up and boom, minus 10%. It is absolutely wonderful. Rockler is a very popular brick and mortar store and online website and a catalog, and they have a professional branch also. Their prices are a bit less than the full retail side. Not terribly significant, but every little bit adds up, and I believe they offer free shipping on some items. And they are offering different specials and different sales all the time. So, check with your local Rockler, or better yet, go on to the Rockler Pro website and find out all the information there. And what about Amazon? Amazon Business is set up to serve business customers. And honestly, I don't remember if it cost any more, or the biggest thing is that if you submit your ST-105, your tax exempt form, then they cannot charge sales tax, because now Amazon with Nexus, any place in the world, they're collecting sales tax. So you might as well go ahead and file your sales tax exemption with them and not pay sales tax on those items that, according to your state's rules, are tax exempt. And again, check with your state, because we have 50 of them and they're all different. Which kind of begs the question, should you be buying stuff online or should you be buying local? And my opinion is yes, you should be doing both. There are some things that you're just not going to be able to find local. Even if you're in a giant city, you're probably not going to be able to find everything that you're using in your shop on a daily basis local. So the internet has brought the world to our doorstep, and take advantage of that. Support the local retailers whenever you can. Absolutely. Okay, let's move on to item number 2, shipping and receiving. This may not be in the top 3 list, but I kind of put it in here because I know of a lot of people who have sold an XYZ online and they need to ship this thing to Honolulu, and they take it to the post office. The shipping is going to be more than the sale price of the item. Don't let this be you. You need to get a handle on your shipping right up front. In fact, I add it into the design process to figure out the shipping. And I do it into the design process because if you can make something a half inch smaller, you might be able to save 30 or 40% on shipping. So it is significant. And I've mentioned this before. Hopefully you have looked into this and maybe checked out Fit Shipper, which is an online app that you can print out labels from and buy shipping different carriers. And they do have this real cool cubic tier resizing calculator. I'm not going to say that again. And what you do is you enter your box size, and it analyzes the cubic volume and dimensions of that box size and makes suggestions on how you can save money. And one of the boxes that I've been using for ever, it suggested that if I could shave off a half inch from the height, I could save 27% on shipping cost. That's something to look into, because every little dime, adds up. There's a lot of these shipping apps online. UShip is a big one. Stamps.com is probably the largest one. I use Shippo, which doesn't have a monthly membership charge. It's just 5 cents a label, and it does a really nice job of collecting my online sales from both Amazon and Etsy, and they pop up in order of when I need to be shipping things. The one thing it does not do is import sales off of PayPal, which is from my own website, and that's kind of a pain. I'm not selling that many items off my own website. I can copy and paste, but if that were to ever take off, if I ever really pushed that, then I would probably be looking for an app that would also pull that data in. It's just so incredibly convenient to have these apps. So that's the shipping part. What about the receiving part? If you've bought a table saw or a bandsaw or drill press, some large piece of machinery online, and had it shipped, especially if it's some of the higher end machinery, and the semi shows up at the end of your driveway on the city street, and he's expecting you to bring your forklift out to offload this, it's going to be a little sketchy. So whenever you do order a large piece of equipment like this, know the shipping details. And some of the websites do a wonderful job of detailing exactly what you need to do to take receipt of the shipment, and some of them don't. A lot of these companies are assuming that you are a large woodworking operation and you have a forklift or you have a loading dock, but if you're working out of your 2-car garage, you probably don't. And it's an easy solution. They need to transfer that load onto a smaller truck that has a lift gate. And sometimes they'll charge like an extra $40, $50, for that service, and it is absolutely well worth it. Do understand that the carrier is responsible for offloading that item at the street level, not to bring it into your shop. So if you're expecting a large piece of equipment, maybe get a couple buddies over, that day that can help you move this thing. Or you partially disassemble it to get it into the shop, which you may end up having to do anyway because, most entry doors are 34, 36 inch, and sometimes that's just not enough. Okay, item number 3 on things that you should be doing as a professional woodworker. Best practices. Personnel, specifically you. You don't have any employees, you're it. And you need to take care of yourself. You may be thinking, what is he talking about? I have my dream job. I'm one of the very lucky few who actually get paid to do woodworking. And I'm in charge. I get to work 8, 10, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. This is a dream come true for me. Yeah, it is for probably the first 3 months, 6 months, maybe a year. I don't think you'll make it past 2 years, honestly. This is a kind of a hard job. And when you're working by yourself, for some people that can be, well, frankly, it could be overwhelming and they stop doing it. Other people can really relish it. I mean, they're just kind of antisocial to begin with, and this is a perfect fit for them. Most of us are kind of in the middle there. And honestly, woodworkers, we are kind of a solitary lot. We love it whenever we do get together, but we don't do that very often. So my big suggestion is don't spend all your time in the shop. If you have structured your business so that you're doing on-site work, you're pretty much covered because you are getting out of the shop. But if you're doing like production work or contract work where you're just, producing pieces and there's not a whole bunch of human interaction, you need to get out more. And that can be really simple. Instead of having packages picked up by your carrier, take the packages to the UPS. Take them to FedEx or the post office and drop them off. At least you see people. You may not have, a lot of contact. And there's always a hardware store. You don't actually have to buy anything whenever you go to a hardware store. You can just go in there and kind of just suck up the ambiance. And while you're at it, take a cruise to the big box store. See what's new, see what people are looking at. You might find something that will solve all of your problems. You could visit a fellow professional woodworker or cabinet maker. Yeah, that's not going to happen. And get out of town. Go to a woodworking conference, a woodworking show. Go ahead and book that trip to Vegas and attend the AWFS. Maybe just go to a home or garden show in your city or a nearby city. Go to a builder's show. Even a quilting convention. Don't laugh at me. Do you know what quilters use? They use wood frames. They also need a way of displaying their quilts. Do you know what they use to make those items? Wood. You literally could become the master quilter's woodworker person. So you can see opportunities almost any place. Just keep your eyes open. You'd be really surprised by the ideas that you can get and the people that you meet and the contacts that may bring business down the road. And of course, there's always research trips to museums or libraries or art gallery. These can be incredibly refreshing. If you're going with your better half, I hope that she understands that you're going to spend more time looking at the woodwork in the gallery than at the pieces that are actually hung in the gallery. They can get a little annoyed at that, but hey, you're looking at craftsmanship that may have been there for 100 or 200 years. Learn from that. And a trip like that would be tax deductible. Check with your tax professional. How about this? I bet there's a woodworkers club near you. Or there might even be a pottery group. Or you could sign up for a class in underwater basket weaving. You might even get college credit for that. Take an art class. I have recommended this to students for years and years. Some school districts have a really good art program. Some do not. We used to teach shop class and industrial arts. Remember that? In high schools. For a large part, those have all disappeared. So take a drawing class. Take a painting class. Take a class on color. You will be absolutely amazed at what you learn, and these skills are directly applicable to woodworking. If you can do a really good job drawing a design, that beats the heck out of some, CAD design that you did on a computer, because you can actually impart some emotion, some soul into that drawing. I have honestly gotten jobs from the drawings that I have done, and I am not a great artist by any stretch of the imagination. But I, basically used mechanical drawing skills and colored pencils. Add some character to this, add some light, let the customer see what you have in mind. And this can take you a very, very, very long way. And also, a lot of times you're dealing with people who have high incomes, who are probably very highly educated and have a great appreciation for the arts. And if you can speak with some knowledge of the arts, you're going to be able to communicate so much better with those people, as opposed to, some guy with a pickup truck and a hammer. You'll be able to make a connection, and don't discount this, because when you can make that connection, you're going to get a higher price for the items that you're making, because they're going to understand that you understand this stuff and what they are looking for. And it can be a very, very, very profitable thing. And of course, you should have fun, taking a class, doing something a little different. Okay, here's another thing I would strongly suggest. Cross-pollinate. You may have been doing woodworking for 20, 30 years, and you are a master at it, and you know virtually everything about woodworking, but do you know anything about metalworking? Start studying blacksmithing. Maybe take a class in blacksmithing. There's kind of a hot market right now for combining those two. Slab furniture on industrial metal legs. There's a lot of wood shops that you'll see a TIG or a MIG welder over there in the corner. I think this is just absolutely wonderful. It gives you so much more versatility that you can bring some very, very unique products to your customers. Maybe it's leatherwork, lutherary, musical instrument building. You can learn so much by studying these techniques. Things that were absolute rules in cabinet making or furniture making, you can see how the luthiers break those rules and how they get away with it and spectacular results they get. And just some, geez, I didn't know how they did that, type things. Car restoration. I don't care what it is, just kind of get out of that woodworking dust bubble and see how other people do craft. You'll get some ideas. I absolutely guarantee it. You might want to pursue some continuing education. I know if you were working in the corporate world for the last 30 years, you don't want to hear those words anymore. But there are some online programs that you can do that makes it very easy and very economical. And these are websites like Skillshare or Udemy or Udacity, Ed2Go. I used Ed2Go for years and years and years. That's how I learned HTML and CSS and web design and photo manipulation, graphics. You can work at your own pace. The cost is very reasonable, and you don't have to travel someplace Tuesdays and Thursdays between 7 o'clock and 9 and sit in a classroom. There are some subjects that I wish I could do that because I've found them very hard to learn online, but, everyone's different. Don't discount this, and there is a wide range of topics that you could learn. If you're kind of struggling with accounting, maybe it's time that you actually take an accounting class. Some other things to kind of keep your sawdust out of your mind. Trade magazines. I've already mentioned Woodworking News. There's also Journal of Light Construction. It does go a little bit more into the home building, the home repair, the home remodeling segment, but they also cover cabinetry and trim and stairs. If you are working a little bit more on the professional home builder side, this would be a very, very good resource for you. And organizations. One that I've been a big fan of is the Society of American Period Furniture Makers. This is a unique group, concentrated pretty much on the East Coast, but these are folks, men and women, who recreate the early American classics, furniture, Chippendale, Whipplewhite, and they are absolute masters. Some of them are professionals. This is what they do, for their livelihood. And they produce I believe it's a annual, it's more than a magazine. It's a publication that is just chocked full of really interesting information about, how we did things 200-300 years ago and the tools that they were using. If you are really into hand tools, you've got to be into this. And Woodworking Network has a list of associations on their website. I'll leave a link in the show notes. But there's, I don't know, 2-3 dozen different groups and associations that you can become involved in. One that stands out is the Cabinet Makers Guild Association. CMA. I think it's Cabinet Makers Association. If you are making cabinets. Now, granted, these guys are targeting the larger shops with employees, but there's a lot of information in there that you can bring down into a one-person shop. Be a very good marketing opportunity for you. You can put a member of XYZ association on your website, and that gives you some cred. Okay, just 2 more things that I'm going to suggest you do to kind of keep in this game. Number 1, you need to get a hobby, because you've probably destroyed a perfectly good hobby by trying to make a living doing it. I can't tell you the last time I built a piece of furniture for myself, because I'm just so busy doing things for everyone else. I'm so far behind. So you've probably lost woodworking as a hobby. When you're filling out one of those forms, what are your hobbies? You're probably not checking off woodworking anymore. So you need to be doing something else. For me, it's fishing. Kind of an armchair hunter. Canoeing, kayaking, which is kind of what I do professionally. You need to get a hobby, something that is not associated with what you're making your living at. And we've talked about some things, earlier that you could easily fit into. How about RC planes? That sounds really, really cool. Or maybe remote control sailboats. Okay, I'm drifting again. Anyway, find something to do to kind of just get you out of the shop. Maybe backpacking. That would be a wonderful hobby. And the last thing that I would like to leave you with is you have to take care of yourself, your physical self. If you've been sitting behind a desk for the last 20 years and you're now in a workshop 4, 6, 8, 10 hours a day, you already understand that your body is not real happy about this. There's just this general ache that comes over one whenever they are moving from a sedentary, work life into a very mobile, sometimes very physical, work environment. And give yourself a break. What I like to do is kind of combine my shop time and my office time. So I'll go out and work for an hour, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours on something, and then come in and check email, write up a bid for, a project somebody has been talking to me about. And then go back out into the shop and continue working for another couple of hours. Their lunch comes in there. You've got to make a trip to, the hardware store so that you're not standing at the assembly table doing one thing for 8 hours a day. When you're 20, you can do that and think it's fun. When you're 40 or 50 or 60, that becomes no fun at all. And I've mentioned this before, flooring, good shoes, good shop lighting. Not having any one of these will cause fatigue. And I've known people who have gotten into the business and they've lasted 2 or 3 years and they give it up. They go back to an office job. Physically, they just could not handle it. So if you don't have those 3 things, you need to figure out how to get them. I told you about the rubber mats my family got me for Christmas one year and how absolutely wonderful. I mean, literally, that's been a game changer. Footwear, I have a good pair of light hiking boots that I wear in the shop. And if I'm really good to myself, I have 2 pairs of good shoes that I alternate in the shop. That keeps my feet happy. And I have invested in LED lighting daylight, 560 degree Kelvin, that has made all the difference in the world. Because if you're squinting at things all the time, that is also tiring. And you're probably not producing the best work that you can. You may be letting some things get out the door that 20 years ago, maybe you wouldn't have let go. And the final thing, get some good exercise. If you've been riding a desk for 20 or 30 years and haven't been taking care of yourself, you're probably not in the best of shape. That's exactly where I was. And about, 5 or 6 years ago, I just kind of reached a point that I am unhealthy. I gave up doing flooring jobs. I gave up doing trim jobs just to get down on my knees and crawl around and stand up and go back to the saw and go back to the floor and go back to the saw. This was a young man's game. I mean, I just couldn't handle it anymore. And of course, you blame your knees because everyone knows that whenever you get old, you get really bad knees. And I had just kind of had it, and I walked into the gym. I knew the owner and said, I have to make a change. And he put me on a kind of a light weightlifting regimen, and I've been doing it ever since then. Not that same regimen, but I've really expanded. And, I'll do a floor now. It doesn't bother me. I can get down on the floor and I can stand up. My knees aren't hurting me. My leg muscles are strong enough that it can, heft my weight, vertically, and it doesn't kill me. Yeah, I'm really sore at the end of the day, but I can do that work now. I don't automatically turn that down because of, the physicality of it. And I just feel so much better. All right, that kind of brings us to the end of the episode. My recommendation of the week, I mentioned it earlier, markadams.com, the woodworking school in Franklin, Indiana. He has just released his 70-some page catalog online, and the registration is open. Highly encourage you to check this out. This might be a way of getting you out of the shop and kind of recharging the batteries a little bit, learning something new, something different techniques. This could be really, really good for you. He offers full week programs taught by world-class instructors. Literally, people from all over the world come here and teach. There are weekend classes, and I believe there are some one-day classes also. So, what's next for the podcast? Good question. No, actually, I have an answer for you. I am going to continue. I've heard from some of you, and I believe that this is adding value to people. The number of downloads continually go up, so that kind of tells me that somebody is listening. And I'm going to continue at least for the next year because that's how much hosting time I bought. I am going to make a couple changes. Number one, I'm going to try to reduce the length of these podcasts. I would love to get it down to around 20-25 minutes. It will just be easier for me to edit and produce a shorter podcast, and you're probably are going to appreciate that too. I know I can get long-winded, and if you haven't discovered this yet, a great tip is to change the speed on your podcast app. There are some people that I listen at like 1.1, 1.2x speed, and it just flows a little better. Different people have different speech patterns, and I know that mine's a bit on the slow side. The other thing that I am going to change or actually add is coaching. And I had a gentleman reach out to me. He was doing this for a couple years and not really making it fly. He was close enough that he could come in and visit. We had an absolutely wonderful time, talking about his business, where he was at and where he wanted to go. We solved some problems, and he was very grateful. So I'm going to add a coaching portion to the website that you can go on and sign up. I think the fees are very reasonable. If you are close enough that you can visit me, that would be wonderful. Or we can set something up on Zoom or Skype or even the phone. And it's not something that you have to do 1 hour all at once over the phone, but maybe, 15, 20 minutes, and then a couple weeks later, call me back and we'll talk a little bit more about the issues that you're working on. I would love to help you get your business up off the ground and running successfully. And this week, Monday morning, email woman who was inquiring if I could build a set of shelves over a kitchen counter, and I had to reply, no, I'm not taking on any more work right now. So at least in my area, the work is out there, and I encourage you to go out and grab some of that and help your community and help yourself and make some money. So with that, I will wish you happy woodworking until episode number 13.